Tonight airing at 6:30, continuing with breaking news. Crisis tonight at the Capitol. Live picture this evening from Washington, D.C., where in the last hour, shielded police officers as well as members of the National Guard have now been pushing back protesters away from the Capitol building tonight. Curfew in D.C. went into effect at 6 p.m. their time. As you likely know by now, the chaos started earlier this afternoon. Supporters of President Donald Trump were there. They ended up storming the barricade, some of them, and confronting police outside the U.S. Capitol as lawmakers were inside trying to finalize President-elect Joe Biden's victory. And then came the scary moments. Many protesters making their way inside the Capitol building. That triggered at some points armed standoffs at the doors on the House floor. The entire House and Senate floors ended up being evacuated. Lawmakers and staffers told to shelter in place. It has been, to say it mildly, an unprecedented day here in America. There are not many words that can describe what has happened. Heartbreaking, I would challenge, is one of them. Good evening. I'm Doug Dunbar. We know at 6:30 if you're looking for Wheel of Fortune, if that's your preference right now, I can tell you it is airing as we speak on TXA 21, and you'll see the program in its entirety. For the moment, we'll give you CBS 11 News at 6:30. And tonight we can tell you that the House Sergeant at Arms says that the Capitol building has now been secured. I'd like to begin our coverage this evening with Jack Fink, who's been following not just the chaos. He's in our CBSN studios. Also, you've been in communication with some from the Texas delegation. Tell us what you've heard.
Well, Doug, certainly quite an unprecedented scene at our nation's capital. As you said, a lot of chaos today. One woman was shot and has since died. Police in riot gear, guns drawn inside the Capitol, all in response to violent protesters who back President Trump. Before 4 p.m., police fired tear gas to disperse the crowd from the Capitol as a curfew went into effect at 5 p.m. our time. Caught in the middle, members of Congress who were preparing to approve the certification of the 2020 presidential hear objections. On Twitter, the violent protests were condemned by members of the North Texas and state delegation. Senator Ted Cruz, who led the Republicans' objection to the counting of electoral votes, said in a tweet this afternoon, "Violence is always unacceptable, even when passions run high. Anyone engaged in violence, especially against law enforcement, should be fully prosecuted." Democratic Congressman Mark Vesey of Fort Worth tweeted, "President Trump's assault on our democracy has caused the violence that is happening outside the U.S. Capitol right now."
They've taken over the Capitol. They're resorting to violence. We've heard gunshots. The Capitol Police have been personally attacked. This is a day by the Constitution that we are to certify the Electoral College. This violence cannot stand. It has to stop.
And former President George W. Bush also issued a statement saying in part, quote, "Laura and I are watching the scenes of mayhem unfolding at the seat of our nation's government in disbelief and dismay. It is a sickening and heartbreaking sight. This is how election results are disputed in a banana republic, not our democratic republic." CBS News is reporting that at the top of the hour, 7 o'clock our time, the Senate and House will resume debating Arizona's electoral votes. Senator Cruz led the Republicans' objection to the results in that state. And, Doug, we will be watching through this evening and be hopefully talking to some members of Congress as well.
Jack, we know you'll stay on top of it. A lot of questions as to whether objections will even continue. We'll see. Be sure to stay with CBS 11 on air and online for any new developments, of course, out of Washington, D.C., with both the protesting outside and also the lawmakers inside, where that joint session count of the Electoral College vote, as Jack talked about, expected to continue into this evening.